Official Van Halen merchandise is provided by VanHalenStore.com. Now, here's your host from Ontario, Canada, EVH gear artist Eric Broadbent.
Hey everyone, it is the weekend. Happy Friday to you all. We're watching EVH Gear TV. We are live, and I'm joined by guitarist and good friend Greg Marra. Greg, how are you?
I'm great, Eric. How's it going, man?
Very good, very good. Nice Friday. Got a little bit of snow here in Canada. It's not too bad. I can live with it. And it's been a busy day for both of us. You were working in the studio today. Working on anything particular at all? Or?
Well, I've got one more week for my my newest record. It's a band thing this time. It's Plenty Heavy is the name of it. And it has Bjorn Englund on bass and Mike Hansen on drums. I'm singing and playing guitar. And like I said, I've got one more week. We're trying to hit that deadline to get product in hand before NAMM.
Oh, nice.
And it'll be an EP. So I have about 10 songs, but I think we're going to put 6 on the EP. And the idea is to be able to, hand it to everybody in hopes that we can make it a bigger production. Let's put it that way. So in an EP, it's just an introduction at this point.
I like that too. And a lot of things, like, you can kind of pick and choose what you want for the EP as well too, and maybe put some of the best on that EP, as opposed to, I don't want to say fillers, but giving your best material, make a great first impression, especially when you're at a place like NAMM.
Right. And that's always the notion, is like the old thing of, the artist and repertoire guy listening to, however many, demos or CDs or guys that did their thing. And then after the first minute, that's all you get. Maybe they didn't even get that much. And especially in the world we're living in now, where everything in the first 10 seconds, if it doesn't catch your attention, you just click through.
I know. Yeah. It's a little, the old days of fast forwarding through a cassette. No one does that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. You remember those days? I remember sending out bubble envelopes with cassettes and hoping if you could get 15 minutes played. These days, if they don't hear a hook right away, it's like next,
Exactly. Yeah.
And
it's got to be 100%.
That's right. And it's easier now for everyone to get these demos to people, whether they're sending an MP3 online or they're saying, come look at my YouTube page or my SoundCloud page, whatever. So the attention demand has never been greater. At least back in the day, you had to be pretty serious, or at least, to take the extra steps to pop in a cassette and throw it or a CD down the road, throw it in the mail, get it off to these guys. But now they're just inundated with demos and sadly a lot of junk. That's why people get scared to even look at this stuff, because there is a lot of junk that comes through, and it's just the nature of the business.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, everybody can do it on their laptop these days.
I know, that's true.
The machine's doing the work.
That's true. We'll talk more about. I want to ask you before we get into talking about when you started guitar and stuff like that. You mentioned, now hopefully I pronounced the name right, Bjorn. Is that right?
Bjorn Englund, yes.
Yeah. No, he did. Did
he's
I not?
The bass player.
Yeah. Did I not just see he's doing the Dio hologram tour?
So right now he has been in that band for several years now. It's called Dio Returns now.
Right.
It used to be called Dio Disciples when they first started. I mean, they've got guys that were in Dio's band. Craig Goldie's in there. Simon Wright on drums. Scott, I think his last name's Hughes on Scott Warren on keyboard. Only Logan is singing. They've got Ripper Owens is also singing. Bjorn's in that band. They're doing the hologram tour right now. Bjorn's also played with Yngwie Malmsteen.
I saw that, yeah.
Tony McAlpine for a couple tours. He was in Quiet Riot in the 90s. He's done a lot of stuff. So that was one of the first guys I met when I moved to California. So, we just have known each other for a long time. He's a good friend. That's
very cool. And the reason his name came up today, I followed him on Twitter. Someone retweeted one of his tweets. I think it might have been the Dio thing or something. I was like, because I was, doing a lot of studying on you guys to prepare for the show. And I saw his name, and obviously I've seen him a lot on your website and stuff like that. And I was like, well, why does that sound familiar? And I mean, there's not too many Bjorns that I know, right? It's not a common name. So I'm like, oh, cool. So I followed him. And then I don't think it was him that shared the picture, but someone shared the picture of the first hologram tour. Actually, I think I saw on Sandra's Facebook. She was scrolling through her Facebook feed. And as much as I'm not really crazy about the hologram tour idea, it looked neat. It looked pretty cool. I mean, for the photo looked pretty awesome. Yeah.
Well, I have an opinion about that for sure. I mean, I think it's amazing. And Bjorn and I talked about this too on one of my recent podcasts for my show. And, as much as I think it's amazing that they're doing that, when I see it, honestly, I think it's a little creepy looking. Mm-hmm. It just freaks me out looking at it. I'm like, man, this is like kind of taking it to the next level. And to stay on a positive note, though, it's amazing that they were able to do that. I mean, the technology involved to bring a hologram to a stage and it actually be, Dio's voice and his likeness and his movements, and that's amazing. No. So I know that they did a really great job. It's a huge production.
Yeah.
And it looks great.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm a complete novice when it comes to this. I don't know the mechanics behind it. I know kind of how a hologram works, but to make it work like that, do they have a person in a costume that they project this stuff onto? Because I read somewhere that they had some kind of a body, like some kind of mechanics, or is it just on a screen, or how does it work?
Well, the way it was described to me by Bjorn, and then I saw this thing. I think it's called Illusion, I believe, is the company that's doing it. Don't quote me on any of that. Right. I just from my research, it is actually a digital image that's projected onto the screen, and I believe it's from behind the screen.
Okay.
And the screen has to be a particular width, so they have to find stages that can accommodate that screen.
Okay.
So yeah, it's all been programmed before, and then as far as like syncing on stage, Bjorn says Simon Wright's got the click track in his earphones. So they're on point.
Yeah. Yep. Nothing is really improvised at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When you said it's creepy, is it to the point where it's like so realistic looking?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, because it's Dio's voice from one of the concerts that he would have performed, those songs that they picked for the shows. And it looks so realistic, and his movements are all the way you would remember Dio. I just think that it's really cool, but for me personally, it's just not really my thing,
Yeah.
But I love what the rest of the show is in regards to Tim Ripper Owens, and Only Logan's such a great singer. Singing those classic Dio hits is amazing.
I can just imagine the production, the visual team that has to go through that and basically crop him out like every single frame. It's one thing when you're working in Photoshop and taking someone out of a photo, but video, every frame painstakingly, masking him. That'd be such a job. I'm kind of on the fence. Like, both sides. I think it's very cool. As a technology side, I'm into technology, so I love that. But when someone's passed, and then do we bring them back, and how is that going to open up the door for everybody? Yeah. Like we're going to see Elvis, come back out again too, and Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
Might go see Jimi Hendrix. I don't know. There's not one that's better than the other, but it's one of those things. If you didn't get a chance to live through the Jimi Hendrix era, maybe I might go see him or something like that. But who knows? We never know.
Right.
But yeah, we'll get into talking about more about the band, Plenty Heavy, shortly. But I want to start just by in a second we'll jump over the chat, say hi to everybody over there. But tell us a little bit about when you got into guitar, when you started, if there's any other instruments you started on beforehand, and then maybe leading up to when did you know that maybe music was going to be possibly a professional career for you?
Yeah. Well, I have pictures. My mom wants to say that I was maybe 4 or 5 or whatever, and I have pictures of me having a plastic toy cowboy guitar from when I first got my first guitar. My mom always played ukulele around us, and I always was infatuated with just the sort of the campfire songs that she played. So for me, honestly, Eric, it was an obsession from being a real little dude. I was completely obsessed with it, so much so that my parents didn't. I don't know if they didn't know what music I would like, but they just wrapped up their records and gave it to me for birthday and Christmas and things like that. The things that, that they had, yeah, it was always there. And then I think one year I got a record player.
Nice.
That was like my Christmas, gift one year. It was like, and I think I had Joan Jett, I Love Rock and Roll was like the first 45, and a John Cougar Mellencamp or whatever it was. But yeah, man, it's been pretty much 100% since I'm a real little kid.
Wicked.
As far as obsession goes.
What are some of the records that they had? I'm curious to see if they're in the same wheelhouse as my parents.
Yeah. Well, they had Buck Owens.
Okay.
I can remember them having like Alabama, Oak Ridge Boys, Dolly Parton. My dad was a huge country fan.
Okay.
Elvis. I remember my mom had the Beatles. The very first Meet the Beatles, like the mono pressing. Simon and Garfunkel. My mom would play that for me, like Bridge Over Troubled Water. I just remember being like inches away from the speaker and just hearing the sonics and just being real little and always being completely obsessed. But that's really what it was. My mom loved the Beatles and, like I said, Simon and Garfunkel and stuff. So it wasn't rock or anything, but
yeah, of course. Well, I'll share some of mine too, and it's certainly not rock. And it's funny, I don't think I've ever analyzed this. I'm thinking ahead here and about my dad.
Yeah.
My dad was never. They've both passed on, but my dad was never one to really say he liked a particular music. I honestly, for the life of me, can't remember him ever saying, this is who I like, or this is my band. I guess he just went along with anything my mom would play. But my mom would always play Les Paul and Mary Ford, Chet Atkins, Elvis to death. You mentioned Oak Ridge Boys. She loved them. I'm trying to think. Burl Ives. I'm not sure if you know him. He's more folk. Yeah. Paul Anka. Frank Sinatra. I'm trying to think who else. I'm grasping for straws here now, but stuff. And I would listen to it all the time. So when people say, who are your influences, I have to kind of say Chet Atkins and people like that, even though I can't play a lick. It was there, whether I liked it or not. I don't think she had one Beatles record. I don't think she did like the Beatles, or she never just grasped them, but it was a lot of country and things like that as well, too. So it's amazing what we get, influenced on as kids. And I like the fact that they wrapped up these records and gave them to you as a gift as well, too. Today some kids might say, oh, wow, thanks, Mom and Dad. But for us back in that day, that'd be awesome.
I was stoked. Yeah, I was completely stoked.
I love it. Great stuff. I'm just rediscovering vinyl now with the boy, introducing him to it, and we're having a lot of fun with it. And I remember the first time I played my Van Halen records again, I've got some bunch of Van Halen, and what other one was it we got? I think with David Lee Roth one, and a couple of them I hadn't heard since I was a teenager, and there was quite the emotion hearing it on vinyl again, and not necessarily the quality. The quality is great. We have a good stereo, but it brought instantly back a time machine. If you want to talk about time machines, that's what it is. And you go back to the exact moment when you heard it, and you feel like that teenager again. It's just a really cool, nothing can bother you. You're reading the liner notes, and you're just like in your zone. Right.
Well, that's what it was too, reading those liner notes. And I remember I had a Kiss 8-track, and we didn't have I don't think we had a way to play the 8-track. It was Kiss Alive 2 my cousin gave me.
Great record.
And but then it was funny because I actually had the gatefold, but no records inside.
Okay.
So I had to find a way to play the 8-track and then look at the gatefold inside Kiss Alive 2. And it just, you'd sit there for whatever it was, an hour and a half or whatever Kiss Alive 2's running time is, and just look at the one still image of Kiss, you know what I mean, in the Alive 2 set.
Yeah, and it was almost like watching a movie for us back then, because it came alive. It was so important. Who was the producer? Who was, blah, 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 engineered, and it just meant so much to us. Nowadays, like we download something from iTunes or wherever, we get them, or, the odd time, like a lot of times what I'll do is I'll go buy a CD. If it's a band I really like, I don't buy too many CDs anymore, physical. It's a couple bands I'll buy CDs for. Van Halen, obviously, it's like it's a religion in this home. And 2, Joe Satriani is probably my second favorite guitarist. So I have to have his stuff, and I like to have the physical media. The weird thing is, I'll pop it. I'll never play the CD because I don't even really think we have CD players. I have a burner on my Mac, and we have like the PlayStation and stuff out there. We sold all of our Blu-ray players because we didn't use them. So we don't even have a real way to play a physical CD. I'll rip them, throw them on the iPod, and then the CD just goes on the shelf. But if I want to look at the notes, I've got them. So it's something we really need to get back into. And bands today releasing nice vinyl once again. Everything's coming out on collector vinyl, the liner notes, all those special things, which are beautiful to have.
I agree.
Yeah.
From being like sort of an independent artist, I have to say the flip side of that is, if I want to go print like 1,000 copies for NAMM of my new record, my new EP, let's put it, it's like $1,200. And then you'll get all that beautiful artwork and what have you. But I use CD Baby as a distributor.
Yeah, I used to use them.
And they'll put it in the same places. You can get it worldwide.
Yep.
And they have these cool download stickers. So for me to buy a couple hundred of those is like $85. So it's kind of a no-brainer for some of those things, because my wife she has a new Honda, and it doesn't even have a CD player in it.
Neither does my car. No, it doesn't.
Right. So it's like, what do you do? So you can give someone it's almost like, are you laughed at if you give someone a CD these days, or so it's unfortunate. But I'm old school, where I would, like for me it was vinyl and cassettes. And I still have all of my cassettes in my big, like looks like a briefcase with 2 stacked tiered, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was like that for us. It was like, that was what we did, is we would save our lunch money. You wouldn't eat lunch for a week and go buy whatever the new thing that came out.
That's right. If it was me doing it in today's society, I would do a CD, and I would do either like the download sticker, like you're saying, or if you wanted to be, fancy for a select few people, like, you don't have to hand these to everybody at NAMM, but, Mr. Brass, Mr. Brass, Mr. Brass, or Mrs. Brass, whoever it may be, it may be like a jump drive, with, 5-year songs on a flash drive, because what you want to do is you want to get them that media fast and get them to play it, because a lot of people are going to be like us, are not going to have CD players. And it's almost, once again, asking them to jump through a hoop to listen to your music. If they happen to put that CD in later, that means they've either downloaded your code or they've popped in that flash drive. They liked it enough to go take a look at that CD and explore through the CD. So you really got them if they look at the CD, but you got to make it fast.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just, you got me so excited with the flash drive.
Yeah.
What's a couple people have mentioned that to me, that besides just having the CD medium, like what I do is I have a particular MP3 file that I can embed the metadata, so I can put all the artists that worked, all the artwork, whatever it happens to be, and I can put that right in the download file.
Yeah.
But I understand there's another way to do it, and there might be companies out there that are offering that you can put everything on a jump drive. I'm just wondering how cost effective that would be.
I think you can get them pretty cheap, and it doesn't have to be big. Like I got a bunch of jump drives, like typical ones. Lexar 32 gigs and 64 gigs and things like that. They're getting so cheap nowadays, but I mean, all you would need, especially with an EP and throw in some bonus artwork for them, probably like an 8 gig, probably not even that.
Yeah,
you wouldn't even need, actually, you could get away with a gig drive. And what I would do is I would get a nice cool bracelet, the ones that are made into a bracelet, nice neon color, put plentyheavy.com on it, whatever, and it's just a bracelet. And they take off the bracelet, pop it in their laptop, whatever they got, and you've got it. And then it's a collectible to be wearing around NAMM all day long, too.
That's killer. Well, there you go.
I would do that. And I'm sure it's not too expensive. There's got to be people that can do
awesome,
that,
man.
right? And just do it on a 15 or 30 or a 60 base, 100 of them. Don't make 1,000 of them right off the get-go, but enough that you can hand out to select people at NAMM. And, don't run short. It's always best to have a few left over after you've given to everybody. Then you can kind of say, here, buddy, here's one at the guitar booths and things like that. But make sure you're targeting everybody that's of influence. And, hey, wear my bracelet. And then you're walking around NAMM, you see these colored bracelets. Hey, okay, that's good. They still got it on. There's a good chance you're going to listen to it.
That's brilliant. I love that. Thanks, Eric.
You got time. Yeah. Speaking of time, let's jump over in the chat and say hi to everybody. We got some good people over here. Lyle Ketchum's jumping in. He says first. Warren Hughes is second. Warren Hughes was giving me a little bit of a background on where he got some of his first guitar lessons from. A friend, mutual friend to a lot of us, and a previous show guest, Mike Himmel, fantastic Van Halen player. Yeah. Carlo Santin's jumping in, saying happy Friday, everyone. Greg Walker, welcome, Greg. Glad to be here. Thomas Santiago is here, saying hey, Eric and Greg. Tone Wars is here. Lexi's Vlog, saying hi. Don Shepard, hey, Eric, Greg, and all. David Jorgen Peterson, hi from the San Francisco area. Let me see here. Nuketown, Ryan, how long is this? Ryan, this is probably a 90-minute presentation. That's your Lexi's Vlog says, hi, Uncle Greg.
Oh, cool.
Right on. That's cool. Got family here.
All right.
Yep. And let me see here. Mike Francis says, was late. I'm here, Eric. Humbucker Lover says, hello, guys. I hope all is well. Sorry I'm late, Eric. No problem, guys. It's all good. I scrolled just a little too fast. I'll get down to the bottom of this and we'll jump back over. Let me see here. Where are we at here? Sorry, I lost myself. Daniel Babin's jumping in, saying, hey, everyone. Kelly Schultzer, Curtis Murata. Let me see here. Mike Francis is here as always. A great supporter. Let me see here. Nuketown 33, did I say that? I did. I'm really bad in the chat sometimes. Warren Hughes, Greg Walker saying here. Humbucker Lover, Jay's Tacos and Guitars is also here. Let me see here. This is David Jorgen Peterson is sharing some things that his mom listened to. Listen to gospel. Ed Ames, Burl Lives. See, that's the first time I've heard another person say Burl Lives in a while. John Gray. My first favorite was Montrose. First two albums, very very cool. Some Sammy Hagar there. Greg Walker. Tennessee ain't what's he saying? Are taking our great guitar. Oh, Tennessee has some great guitar players, guaranteed. Single Coil Lover is here. That's the better half of Humbucker Lover. Gotta love that. His tattoos look really good too. Lyle Ketchum for me. It's Eddie Satriani, Eric Johnson, Ian Thornley, and Devin Townsend. There's some great talent there for sure. Let me see here. Lyle Ketchum says, I used to buy tons of CDs. There was a place here in town where you could get them for $2 a disc, then sell them back for 50 cents. Not too bad. I'd buy them, run home, rip them, and go back and sell them back. Not too bad at all. Not a huge loss. And going to Nashville quick. The chat is moving. He says, I'll catch him. I get it all the time. Blackie DH is here. Tavares Project. Great ideas, Eric, with the flash drives. Yeah, I think that's kind of cool. That's one of the things I specialized in before was marketing and things like that. And between Poison Ivy and I with the band, we did some really cool, neat ideas. We didn't invent them all by any means, but we took the ball and ran with it. Every idea has been done. You just got to do it put a little different spin on it. Let me see here. So I think I'm down towards the end. Bobby Lopez is here from Toronto, another fellow Canadian. And Kelly Schatzer, first time watching, had to check it out since Greg was on. Fantastic. And hopefully you like it enough to stick around and come back around. So let's get into some Van Halen. I can't have anybody on the show without talking Van Halen. Sometimes there's a lot of Van Halen, sometimes not so much. But when did you first discover this juggernaut of Van Halen, and how did it affect you from that moment and shaped you as a musician going forward?
Well, I was hoping we'd talk Van Halen.
All right. Good. Well, we got lots
I have to be honest with you. Yeah. It's like, I can remember when MTV first started, really, I was talking about all those records that my parents influenced me with. But then when MTV started, we actually had cable when it was like, you had like a little box on the top of your TV.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was like channel 37 or 38 was MTV. And we managed to get cable in time to see like the launch of MTV. And so, at the time, there was maybe 50 videos. It was like Pat Benatar and, Haircut 100 and stuff like this. But then there was this one band, and it was, I think the very first one, I have to say it was likely Unchained, 81 Oakland Coliseum. So they played that one all the time. And the thing that's funny about that is, that happens to be my favorite Van Halen song to this day.
Mine too.
And likely was the first one I ever heard.
Yep.
But yeah, it was that. And then So This Is Love was the other one that they had a video for. And I don't know why I'm thinking there might have been a third one from the Oakland Coliseum, but MTV had those videos.
Yep.
So that, for me, it was like, that was the introduction. It was like, I think Eddie was playing the circles, the white and black circles guitar.
Yep.
And so, I mean, I don't know if you've, what your favorite Eddie Van Halen guitar is, but for me, it's like, even to this day, it's like, I just love that guitar.
The circles.
Yeah.
Very cool. I do like it. It's not my favorite, though, and that's actually a question we're going to jump around a little bit, which is a lot of fun. We'll jump into the guitar discussion. Yeah. Well, first of all, I discovered Van Halen on Women and Children First, and it was In the Cradle Will Rock. So that was my first introduction, and it's my least favorite song of theirs today. I like it. I mean, I like anything by Van Halen, but it's my least favorite on the list. Unchained, like you said, is my first and always will be. It's my first song of a favorite song of any band. But I discovered my cousin brought me down to his house one time. They had a record player, and it was his older brother, so he's playing this. I'm like, oh, this is cool. I'm hearing the chugging of the keyboards, and everything, thinking it was guitar at the time, too, not even really knowing what it was. I liked it a lot. So then I went and discovered the back catalog and then grew up with the rest of the catalog. But guitar-wise, obviously, a lot of people would think, okay, maybe the Frankie, one of the versions of the Frankie, whatever. But to me, it's the Kramer 5150. It's just, and the only reason for that is I think, people could argue this, but I think it had the longest shelf life as far as on the road and the tour and albums and things like that. I mean, he used it right up until, he even got a little bit of exposure on the 2004 tour. But, OU812 tour on the record and the videos, it was used in that. I mean, it was used quite a bit, more so than a lot of the other guitars. So that's my favorite, just because it's cool. And if you're going to make your own guitar, and stripe it up like Eddie, it's maybe a little easier than some of them as well, too. So that's maybe a little bit of my reasoning behind it.
The cool banana headstock on that one?
Yes.
Is that what the Kramer was? Yeah.
Yeah.
And has EVH now put out that guitar?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm seeing guys that are reproducing that or if that's what that is. It's a
combination
officially licensed.
Yeah, it's a combination of both. There's a lot of guys making them. Then now it is officially, you can probably just barely see it off camera. I know you're seeing a different camera than what the audience is seeing right now. So it is officially released. It's called the EVH 5150 Stripe Series. It's a little different than the traditional Stripe Series. The neck profile, as opposed to being a wider neck, it's a little thinner. It's a more of a softer C-shaped neck, not like the Wolfgangs either. It's completely different. People think either it's just like a Wolfgang or it's just like the regular Stripe Series. It's not like either one of them. It's very, very cool. The body and the paint, it's all striped as well too. It's not a veneering or a decal or anything like that. It's physically striped. It's a satin finish, which is throwing a few people off. I love the satin finish. Like, I like to keep my guitars clean. Do you clean your guitars, or you don't care?
Yeah, I do clean them.
Yeah.
But the guitars that I play a lot are like relicked or beat up or have such a high gloss on them that you would never even see it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, for me, I like to, and I'm a hypocrite in saying this because I ran out of guitar polish. and I got to buy some more guitar polish. But I like to keep them clean. I was so anal about it for the longest time that after a show, I would always have a towel, not for my face, whatever, for my guitars. I'd wipe the necks down, wipe the strings down, and just take off some of the gunk before I'd put it in the case, whatever, or sometimes even between sets. And I like to keep them clean, whatever. But with the satin, I haven't even had to wipe it with a cloth since I've got it, and I've had it now for about 3 months. So it's really, really nice. The only thing that's throwing people... What's that?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Are you getting the finger oils where your hand rests?
A little bit.
It'll shine. Because I've got a couple satin guitars here that do that.
Yeah. I do have a bit of a greasy complexion. I'm not afraid to admit it. I'll be looking at a camera, and over my forehead, I've got like a grease stain on my camera or my phone or whatever, right? So I'm a little greasy that way. But I don't notice on the guitar. So I don't know. Knock on wood. It's pretty cool. But the headstock is different on this guitar, and that's what's thrown some people. It's it's not the traditional banana, or it's not even a pointed. It's a little different. You'd have to look online to see it. And they can't go after the exact headstock because of Gibson and owning Kramer now, right? So there's a little bit of a fight that way. So they did a tribute to it, and I think it looks great. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question, if you don't mind, and
sure,
hopefully you'll know this.
Please.
This last summer I did G4. I did that G4 show with Joe Satriani and my heroes. It was an amazing show. Mm-hmm. And I was gifted the Warren DeMartini. It was the Mexican version of the Warren DeMartini guitar. It's a snake guitar. I don't know if you can kind of see it in the background.
Yes.
But I wonder, I know that the price point on that new is like $1,400. Mm-hmm. And I know that some of the price points on the Stripe guitars, like the Bumblebee and the Circles and what have you, are right around that sort of price point. And I'm wondering if those guitars are considered like a wrapped finish. Or do you know how those guitars are wrapped? Because I feel like that one, the reason why the price point, because everything's amazing, but I'm wondering, just because Dan Lawrence painted the other ones, that's why they're $3,000, as opposed to the ones that are more like the $1,000.
Well, there is a lot of speculation when it comes to the EVH. Now, I should know more about the Charvel line, same family, but I don't invest a lot of my time into I love the Charvels. Trust me, I want to get a San Dimas, one of my next guitars. I just don't know a lot about the guitar. Excuse me. And I did see that when you got that guitar, and I've been familiar with that guitar as well too. I do think it's probably still a painted guitar, not a wrap, whatever. But I'm assuming that's a Mexican-made one at that price point. Is that correct?
It is.
Yeah. So Mexican-made there to keep that price down. And the pickups are probably made offshore, but to the American specs, just like the Wolfgangs. There's nothing different about the pickups. They're just made another factory. They have to follow an exact blueprint, whatever, a schematic, I should say. And it has to measure the same output. Okay, they pass quality check. It goes from the guitar, so those things keep that cost down. But I think you've got a real deal there. I don't think it's a wrap. I know with the Van Halen ones, they're not wrapped. We've seen pictures from the EVH factory where they're painstakingly, and I've even seen, it happens, flaws. Somebody not having a good day one day, and there's a couple stripes that just aren't exactly, to par. So it happens.
Yeah.
Yep. So
interesting.
I think so.
I've always wondered about that, because I'm just thinking, when you had mentioned about the pickups in this guitar, the Warren DeMartini, like I'm telling you, the $1,400 one I have, it's Duncan stamped. I mean, it's a quarter pounder, and then they had the specs on the bridge pickup is that they took one of Warren DeMartini's guitars from the 80s that had I think it was like somewhat of a diminished magnetic output, and they wrapped it and they matched the output of what that pickup was and what it was doing.
That's cool.
And, it is kind of ratty, but it sounds killer. It sounds amazing.
That's the thing. That was probably one of his main guitars. Everything from blood, sweat, tears, and beer probably spilled into that cavity of that guitar over the years. And that'll take its toll. And sometimes people say, "What is it? Why does this guitar sound so good?" It's that exact same thing. It's age, it's playing, it's accidents, it's maybe a faulty something, a bad jack. But it adds character to the overall sound, and that's why they'll do these special one-off pickups, or they'll recreate these things because it's to sound exactly like that time.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love it. Personally, I'm like a huge fan of the Charvel. You give me any of them, I love them all. You go down through the history, I mean, except for when they had Charvette or whatever that was supposed to be, like the real budget student version. But if you keep it in sort of like what their price point would have been, like $899 through the really expensive ones, they're all killer guitars. I just love them.
They
are. I feel like that Specials line of what Fender has for EVH I feel like some of the tooling might be the same.
Yeah.
That's just a guess. I don't know that.
No, I think you're right on that. And I'll tell you the reason why I want to get one for that sole reason. The Stripe series in the EVH line, I love a lot. My black and white, when I play a lot, it's got a fairly fat neck on it, and it seems very, very thin. And of all my guitars I can play, I don't play very fast as it is, but when I feel comfortably playing fast, that's the guitar to go to. It's like it's a racehorse. And the only thing that feels similar to me in that line are the Charvels. And the San Dimas I love to death, because the only thing I would like better on that Stripe series guitar is a second humbucker up in the neck. And I'm finding myself sometimes going to reach and flick up to the neck. There's no other pickup. So let's gravitate over to a San Dimas. And there's a couple I really love to death. I like the quilted burst ones. There's a red, kind of a smoked red black one, and then there's a purple one that's just beautiful. So I don't think I would change anything other than get them. I would do my typical FU tone upgrades I'd put in the brass block and all the extra goodies. And that's the only thing I would change. I wouldn't touch the pickups. I wouldn't touch anything. Just a little bit of hardware, and I'd be off to the races with that. Beautiful guitars.
Well, I have to tell you, when Fender had the visitor shop, this is like 2008 or 9 or whatever. I'm telling you, I went down. I live about 100 miles from where I am in Southern California. And I'll bet you I did 25 visitors tours, to the point where they just knew who I was. You know what I mean? And I know some of those guys. I know John Cruz and a few of those other guys that Dylan Wilson. And I mean, it's just honestly, I wish they hadn't closed it, because I would still make my pilgrimage down to the Fender shop. But I've got a lot of really cool pictures of the Stripe guitars, the bodies in the rack for drying, and I'll have to send you what I have, because it was just it was awesome. And they had the visitor shop you could buy the bridge pickup, the EVH bridge pickup
while you're there
at the time. Yeah, it was really cool, man. I've got some pictures of me holding what would have been like I don't know if they call it the replica guitar, or they put it back. They put the guitar out. They issued it again. And I remember there being one of the representatives that was sort of like, walking the visitor center floor, and we're holding the guitar. I had some of my students there with me, and I'm going, dude, this seems like it's kind of messed up. The bridge was kind of jacked and kind of wonky, and it wouldn't find a 0 point. I'm going, I wonder if this is kind of like not right. I mean, it is the visitor, that is Fender. I mean, we're here where they built it. And the guy who, I don't know who it was, but it was someone that worked there, that said, that's how Eddie set it up.
Now, you're talking about the 25K one, the big one, like the Frankie?
It is a Frankie, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It was the one that, I'll send you a picture of the one that I have.
Okay.
The one that I was holding.
Yep.
And, man, it seemed like the strings were higher than I would have guessed.
That's
and
right.
It seemed like the bridge was not finding the 0 point. It was really weird. Like the bar was kind of loose, and it was really interesting how they had it set up. But that's what his guitar was.
You described it 100%. So you were playing the right guitar. And my son Eric Jr. and I, and one of my friends, he might be in the chat, Darren Moore, we went up to my sponsor Mike's Musica, Mike Palermo, great player, up in Thorold, Ontario, and he's one of the few people in Canada that has one, and they're around 30K Canadian. Excuse me.
Wow.
They're not cheap. And it was our a treat of a lifetime to play that thing. But I'm going to be 100% honest. Like, if I had the money, I would love to have one. However, I laid my Stripe series guitar, the 5150 Stripe, and then I jumped over to that one, and it sounded like I just learned how to play guitar yesterday. It really, I was like, oh my God. First of all, I have a huge stigma playing in music stores. I've worked in music stores, never played in the music stores. I do not like to play in a music store. I'm almost like that shy guitar player. I won't do it. So we were there on a mission. And the people were nice. The staff were great. We felt like we were with family. So, okay, my inhibitions were gone, and I played the guitar. And it was just, I played horrible. I sounded bad. And like you said, you could actually go 3 inches with the bar before it actually engaged. The strings were super high. The neck felt like I was holding on to a baseball bat, a Louisville Slugger. But it was cool. It was the wow factor was amazing. But I forgot that I was a guitar player at that point. I was just fanboy Van Halen looking at this thing. No, in hindsight, looking back, I watched some of my parts of the video, and I'm like, okay, it's not horrible, so I can live with that. And I was good enough that I could still leave it on my YouTube channel. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't my proudest moment in life. But that's the thing. Yeah. That's how Eddie wanted it. That's how he played, and that goes to show you how good he is to be able to play on something that's like, wow.
Yeah, it is amazing. Yeah, it just every time, it's funny because it's maybe, and I'm going to sound like a huge EVH nerd here, but honestly, every single time I go to record a new song or whatever I'm recording, if I'm trying to go for a Van Halen-esque tone or something that I feel is a good tone, if I've gigged with the amps that I usually record with, and I want to try to find the set points, I'll usually try to find like Van Halen isolated.
Yeah.
And I'll just put that on my system, and I'll turn one of the channels. I'll pan it hard left or right, wherever he happens to be, just so I can get that mono sound of what was happening back in the day. I mean, you're not going to be able to create those patches and those channels from Sunset Sound, but I'm still a big fan of an amplifier with tubes and a couple microphones on a cabinet and moving air.
Oh, for
Although
sure.
I know the Helix is amazing.
You've got the Fractal behind you.
Yeah, there's a ton of these digital things that are amazing. But for me, it's like I kind of feel like I'm at the point in my life where I'm able to still record tube amps. So that's what I'm going to do that just because, that's my thing. But
that's right. No, I like the way you said that too about this is a very, very cool thing. That's probably a takeaway a lot of us that like to record, whether it's hobbyist or professional. When you said you like to strip it down and isolate it, kind of pan it left, when you're not hearing this huge, magnificent guitar tone, and sometimes, you bring it down to its bare minimum, and it may just sound good, not phenomenal, just good. And if you can get your guitar to sound good there, instead of trying to process this huge thing right off the get-go, let it have some life there, and then the good engineers out there, I'm not one of them, but people that can mix and master can really bring that to life. But start with it narrow and get it to be brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Over in the chat, we got Guitar for Cure jumping in. He says,
hey guys.
Yeah, Peter says, what up guys? Marra and the Charvels. Single Coil Lover saying hi back to him. Carlo Santin, Hear About Later was the third video. Yes, Hear About Later, and that's a great song as well too. I was trying to think of the third one.
Yeah.
Carlo's got it when it comes to the he's gonna give me a run for my money for Van Halen knowledge. He really brings it every time. The first VH I ever heard was Eruption. I was hooked immediately. Let me see here. Humbucker says mine is a Frankenstrat. Guitar for Cure says happy to be hanging. Nice to have you, man. Don Shepard says mine too. Eruption. Q107. That shows Toronto. That's Q107 is kind of like the big stations in LA for Canada. Kim Mitchell. Now, do you remember Max Webster and Kim Mitchell? Remember that name? Well, he's a DJ there now. Yeah, so pretty cool.
Cool.
I remember we were in Toronto. We were down with the band one time playing. We were playing the Hard Rock, and we walked right by Q107. And Sandra, my better half here, she went in to use the washroom somewhere, and she comes out, or actually while she's inside the Hard Rock, right by Q107 or down by Q107, I think it was myself and the drummer, we were walking by, and Kim Mitchell was out having a little break, whatever. I'm not sure if he was smoking or just having a break, whatever, but I was like, oh, cool, Kim Mitchell. We're talking to him for a second, and Sandra loves him. And Sandra comes out, and I said, oh, Sandra, come here for a sec. And she didn't see him, whatever, and she's still expecting the long hair, right? So she didn't even really know who he was at this time. And I said, hey, look, say hi to Kim Mitchell. And she's like this, and I think she just literally froze. It was so cool. But, that's the Q107 story. Great station. And anytime I would drive to Toronto as a kid, as soon as I was in range, turn it, and I was like, oh, I think I can get 107 right now. And then you got your rock and roll. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Guitar for Cure. Let me see. Don Shepard, the Q107. Greg Walker says, I'm 50 years old, so VH1 is special, but to see VH on MTV was great. Off track, the solo on So This Is Love, underrated. It certainly is. That record on Fair Warning is okay. So you mentioned Unchained being your favorite song. Mine too. My favorite record is Fair Warning, just because it's that roller coaster. It's almost like you get an admission to a theme park and you don't know what you're going to get, and it's all over the place. And just when you think, okay, I'll catch my breath coming out that roller coaster, Eddie throws you for something else again, and then Holdsworth's kind of influence on that record, all kinds of crazy stuff. It was a great record. Let me see what else we missed. Loud Catch. My first video was Video Killed the Radio Star. I can't remember my first video. What was the very like before Van Halen? You must have. What did you see? Can you remember your first?
The very first video I saw was Video Killed the Radio Star.
Really?
That was the first one they played on MTV. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was the very first video I ever saw. I mean, there was like, I don't know, like they would have like these late night shows, and they would play like what they would call a video, like Leo Say or whatever, like these silly things. I mean, and then there was like 1978, whatever it was, there was like a full concert on like network TV in the States back in 78. I remember seeing that, just bits and pieces of that, but I don't, as far as like music video for like one song, it was definitely that one, Video Killed the Radio Star.
I'm going to say, I've never had this discussion before, so I'm out to lunch on this one, but I'm going to just speculate. Might have been Money for Nothing. Maybe.
Dire Straits.
Yeah, Dire Straits. It might have been that one. It could have been a few other ones as well, too. And like you say, we had all those shows that our moms and dads would watch as kids growing up, too. We might have seen those and not really paid attention. But yeah, video. Right. And then we had Much Music here in Canada, which came slightly after, VH1 and MTV and all those kind of things. So we were a little late to the party. And I'm not sure if you know what it's like in Canada for radio and video. We have this CanCon. You have to play, I think it's 80% Canadian content. So we were inundated with Canadian music. Some of it's good. Yeah. Your Triumph and your Rush and, all that kind of good stuff. But a lot of it was not so good. But if they got people dancing and, paid the bills, it was all good. So we couldn't be too choosy. Over in the chat, let me see here. Guitar for Cure says, where is that MLB relic, Charvel, Greg? Yanks and Pirates. Oh, yeah. Show that. I'm going to go to your big screen. Yes.
Yeah, this is the one. This would have been like, when they put these out, this is a 2014. And it was, I paid maybe, I don't know, $300 on eBay. I just kind of like the pickup combination. Mm-hmm. These would have been like $8.99 US when they first came out. The pickups were Duncan's. They're fantastic. I've got two other ones here that have the original, but I just wanted to kind of test my hand at kind of figuring out how to do that. And honestly, it might have been a Mike Palermo thing I saw, where he did a poly finish. Yeah. And I don't know if it was Mike that did like the razor blade trick and then stained it with coffee. I saw somewhere online that someone did that, and I don't know if you can even see that.
A little bit, yeah.
But what it is like you just take a light sort of like razor blade. You have like I don't know, 10 different, you got to keep having a sharp blade, and you make that checking look. So that's what I did with this. I just kept going, and I kept looking at the Fender Custom Shop ones. With poly, you're sort of trying to get lucky that it's going to cooperate because it just melts, it being a plastic. Yeah. So I did that, and then I saw some pictures that Eddie had, a straight guitar, where he sanded off the logo or whatever. I got to show you a picture of it, Eric, because I want to see if you know what it is. But you could still kind of see where the logo was. So I got lucky that when I sent off the Charvel logo, that it did that. Okay. And then I tried my best to do the cigarette burn, even though I've never smoked a cigarette in my life. It really didn't cooperate with me. But I got to be honest, this is my favorite guitar. It's got a little shout out to my friend Jamie Scott from Third Power Amps. Sent me his new pickups called the Magfrag. Okay. And they are awesome. And it has 3 different Alnico pickups to take the 3 string groups into, sort of like the right magnetic pool. Let's put it that way. As far as the engineering goes behind it, that's about as far as I go. But I got to tell you, it's like the clearest bridge pickup I've ever heard. And then it's one of his just single coil, third power in the neck. So that's what this is. And then what I did was I put a kill switch where the 3-way selector would have gone. Okay. Just because I needed something to fill the hole. It's kind of cool to have that. And this is kind of like the Nuno or even like a Gibson. Yep. What was it? The Explorers had it right there. Yep. It's so much more convenient to have all this in this area here as opposed to having to go around the volume knob, But it's really no frills, but I love this guitar. Something about the neck and body combination was correct when they decided to match these two together. It just sounds amazing live. And again, not really that much of an expensive guitar in any sense, but I love it. It's my favorite.
You know what? I'll tell you what I like about that guitar. First of all, what you've done to it is very, very cool with the relicing job on it. Number 2, I've become very, very used to that toggles position, like a Les Paul or in the Wolfgangs, obviously in Eddie's guitars, everything from the Music Man through the PVs through what we have now, or that same spot. They've been changed around a little bit. But as much as I'm comfortable with that, I love the fact I would be able to reach down and grab it down below, and not like a 3-way slider or a 5-way slider like you'd have on a Strat. I really like that position like that. Very, very cool. I think I can see us flipping back and forth between neck and bridge would be very convenient. Yeah. That looks awesome on the back too, by the way.
Yeah. Well, this was kind of like my test run. I messed it up, so I just kept sanding it. But we had I had a friend port a hole here, and then we had to sort of get a drill bit this way to run the wires. But yeah, man, I love this. If anyone would ever want to make me what my guitar would be, I kind of already have it. That would be this one.
Based off of that. And you know what's really cool about guitars like that? Like sometimes the cheaper guitars can be like I've always praised those old Kramer guitars. And obviously I got into them because Eddie was playing them, but $200-$300 Kramer guitars. Some of them were coming with the real Floyd Roses, and I played so much better on those because I wasn't afraid to smash a $2,000 guitar. I didn't even know what a $2,000 guitar was back then, but you're not worried. The inhibitions are gone, and they do nothing but play. They're not made to look pretty. What do you got there?
Okay, now I want to show you.
Okay.
So I was telling you about me sanding off the logo.
Okay.
Do you know what this neck would have been? I don't know if you can even see this. Do you see this guitar he's holding? And you can kind of see the headstock.
Yep. That's one way. But
you see how you sort of see the logo, but he sanded it off, or whatever happened to it fell off. Do you know what that neck is?
I don't know what the actual neck is. I know he stuck the Gibson logo over top of it.
Okay. Now that looks like a Gibson logo.
Yeah. He put it on there purposely as a kind of kind of his own little homage, whatever. But that was definitely sanded down. And then that one stuck on there. So I've had people ask me that a million times. It's like, does that say Gibson? I was like, yeah. So you just have to go look for the old water seal or slide and seal, whatever you call the the model type decals, or like those ones, and stick it on there. A lot of people make them themselves now too. So you can get them from all different hobbies.
Well, while we're talking about that, if you don't mind, hopefully you can answer this one.
Yeah.
A little bit of trivia, and I don't know the answer. It's probably out there if I dug deep, but so I do know this part of it because I know Michael Charvel and Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that there was what Eddie would have considered, or they called it, a seconds guitar, which meant it had a knot hole or whatever.
Sure.
So I know that part of the original Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct? That would have been like the original. That's what I'm led to believe
as well. Yep.
So what's the order for which it went through different paint jobs? So was it originally the black and white striped guitar?
Black and white,
and then it moved on to the red and like what we know today.
There's several different versions of pick guards from a full pick guard. I think at one time actually even had 3 pickups in it. Had a full white pick guard. Had a regular black pick guard, one he made himself. Cut out like some vinyl, whatever, like an actual vinyl record, just a little teardrop type shape. It had quite a few different versions of it, and I mean the red. I think the red, white, and black, as we know today, has become like the average person who doesn't know Van Halen can say, oh, that looks like that Van Halen guy's guitar. They see some of his other versions and they're not necessarily sure what that is, other than maybe the stripes stand out as something significant. But I think, we go back and talked about the guitars earlier, our favorite guitars. That guitar, even though it's not necessarily my favorite, has the most history to it and the most puzzling, like there's so many things about that guitar that just should not even work. And I mean, how did it work? Even him, like when he wanted to put the neck pickup back in there, at the time he didn't even know how to wire them all up. So he just, okay, well, let's just tuck everything in here. Let's put the 3-way switch or the 5-way switch. I think it's a 3-way, right in the middle. It actually became iconic.
So what did he do? He put a neck pickup in that was non-functional, and then just kept the switch for the bridge.
I think that neck pickup was functioning at one time, because I'm pretty sure, and there's other guys out there that know this way better than me. I never claim to know it all, but I think there's some shots where you see 3 pickups in that guitar, like the humbucker single, I think. But it just didn't, when he took everything apart, didn't know how to wire them back up, and thought, well, what do I do here? And I think probably what he even did is he didn't even want to take the pickup back out because he didn't know if he broke the chain somewhere. Everything works like this. I'll leave it like this, but I can't mount them, so I'll just stick it in here like this, right? And that's where he left it. It's all rusted, and all these guys that duplicate these guitars now, they'll do all their tricks to rust out a brand new switch in the middle, and there's some pretty crafty people out there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk, if you don't mind. I don't mean to lead this, but we're kind of talking about the pickups, and you had mentioned the single bridge pickup, and how you would like to have a neck pickup. I have a couple guitars and one is the Wayne. I forget what he calls that guitar, but he just sent me this guitar this year, the Wayne Charvel guitar, and it has a single bridge pickup. And their notion is that there's no magnetic pull for the neck, so it makes the bridge pickup not have to work as hard. And it's a clearer sound. Okay. I've heard a couple guys say that. Phil X has said that as well, but that's what Michael and Wade and Charvel talk about when they talk about just having one single pickup in the bridge position.
See, I don't know enough about that. I have no engineering background whatsoever. In theory, that makes sense. But like then some of these other people, they'll argue, I'll talk about these little tiny brass additions, from Futone and things like that, and people say, oh, you're crazy. It's like, no, trust me. So there's theories and there's practical, real world results. I don't know. I would like to believe in that, and I think you're probably right. There's nothing fighting one another, and also for the purists as well too, pulling that tone knob out of there and having one less of a stop in the circuit, potentially better tone as well too. So I don't disagree with that either, and a lot of guys do that too. I like it. What we're going to do? We're going to take a little twist here, and hopefully this all works. We're going to jump back to some more questions in a second, but I've got a video queued up of yours. Let's so people can get a good feel of what the band's all about, Plenty Heavy. And before we actually get into it, maybe you can set it up and tell everybody what this was. You told me a little bit off the air about it, but tell everybody what we're going to see.
So this was before we got Bjorn in the band, and it was a vocal band. This was with Rob Welch, who Rob was an amplifier buyer for Guitar Center for many years, worked for Musicians Friend. He's now with another dealer in Nashville. Great bass player, great friend. Now since he's moved to Nashville, I just restructured everything, turned all the songs into vocal songs. So our band is basically a 3-piece, and the idea was to have pop songs that would be like, relevant in like kind of a pop punk thing. But I was kind of thought like those guys didn't keep the solos in, and didn't keep the kind of shred factor. I hate to use that word, but have the extra, let's even call it the Van Halen thing in there, where you got the notey stuff in there, the cool stuff. They would just erase that. And I never knew why like Green Day didn't have a hotshot guitar player in there. I just never could understand it. So that's kind of what our take is on it. Hopefully you'll be able to sing along with the songs. It's like kind of like a more pop punk with the solos and stuff. So the stuff that you're going to hear that's going to come out on the EP is all vocal based. The video is prior to us getting Bjorn in the band. So Mike Hansen on drums is currently in the band. I'm singing now too, but what you're going to see, this is just a live version of us playing a Swift kick for my first record.
I like it. A good drummer as well. And I know Rob very well. Rob's been on the show a couple times. With
cool.
Tessie, and got to talk to him at NAMM, which is great. Really good dude, and an accomplished musician. I never didn't know he played bass as well as he does as well too. So let's go jump in. Hopefully everything goes good. It's popping on, and we'll come back. We'll get back to the chat and get into some more Van Halen and some other great questions of you as well. So let's see what we got. balls to the wall on that one, man. That was phenomenal. That was absolutely phenomenal. You got everything you could ask for in that. Making a statement without showboating, it was amazing. It was a great song. So tell us a little bit of the background on that one. You were saying that was had some Mike Varney background on that.
Yeah, well, thank you for starters. Thanks, Eric. I mean, that goes back to, the live version for that video is like 2015, but I put the record out in 2005, so it was like 10 years ago, whatever, 12 years ago now. But yeah, so Mike Varney, who had the Spotlight column back in the 80s, put that spotlight, he was back in Guitar Player magazine doing it again. So when I decided to put that first record out, I just thought to myself, well, the stories you always hear are that, an artist repertoire guy is only going to listen to the first 30 seconds, if that, before it moves on to the next thing. So if I'm sending it to Mike Varney, I got to be honest with you. When I put out my first record, it was with that in mind of, I want to get a deal. I want to be on Shrapnel. That's all. My favorite players were on that. And so when I realized that I wouldn't be singing on it, or I wouldn't have time to have a vocalist on it, because my son was born within, like a month of the record coming out, that I would just play as much as I possibly could on that first track. The other tunes follow like more of a vocal melody on my first record. But that first song was just like, let me just throw the kitchen sink in. And, I rented a Blue Saraceno's Dirty Boy amp from a Black Market Music in LA. Okay. And so we had that amp, and I was using a Mesa Boogie Subway Rocket through a 412. And I recorded my friend Eric Hill in San Francisco Bay Area. We recorded at his house, and I spent like a week doing it. I was nonstop. He would, he's an engineer, sort of like part-time, but he has a fantastic studio. And so he'd go to work during the day, and I'd get up first thing in the morning, have coffee, and record all day long. And it took me about a week to make that first record. But yeah, that was the idea behind it, was to get Mike Varney's attention. So when I sent it to him, he called me back, and I couldn't believe it was Mike Varney on the other end. It was like, you think about a record label guy being someone's, hero. I mean, this guy was my hero because of Jason Becker. I mean, you just go down the list of all the amazing guys he broke. And we talked about an hour, and he kind of put it in a little interview thing and put me in I think it was May 2005 Spotlight column. So that was like the thrill for me. And then, he asked me if I had printed any copies, and if I had any ideas for how I wanted to distribute it. And so, this is prior to the way it is now digitally. And I had printed so many copies that it just didn't even make sense, because if I had to give him the record, then he'd have to print them too. And what do you do with 5,000 copies? You know what I mean? So that never worked out. But I think it actually worked out better for me, because I had to figure out everything about releasing a record, and to get it to different, media outlets, to get it to all these artist relations guys at different companies. I mean, early on, I was endorsed with Ernie Ball Music Man, because I had a Petrucci guitar that they put me in the Spotlight column with. So, when I first came out of the gate, it was really cool, because I had a lot of great companies that supported me as well. So it was awesome.
Wicked. We'll talk about some of those companies too that you're still with as well too later on in the program. But I use a kind of an expression here in Canada. I'm not sure if it's just a Canadian thing, but throwing ideas to see if they stick. And I always like to use the analogy of throwing spaghetti at the wall, right? When your noodles are ready, if they stick to the wall, not that you're going to eat them off the wall, but if they stick, they're ready. What you've done with that one is you took the noodles, you took the pot, you took the utensils, the sauce, and you chucked it all at the wall. And some people can do that. Other people can't necessarily do this. Some people will they'll throw the kitchen sink in, and it just sounds like, okay, I have to play 9 million notes in this, a minute and 45 seconds, and you didn't do that. Like there's embellishments, there's little tiny tricks, there's things that it's following vocal melodies, but it's not following vocal melodies. I'm hearing stuff like Satriani. I'm hearing some Paul Gilbert in there. I'm hearing all kinds of crazy stuff. Some Nuno. I kind of hear some little bit of phrasings there as well too. And the tone is really good too. Not overly processed. I don't barely hear any effects on there. It's really raw and it cut. So I love it. I want to go to the chat for a quick second. We're going to come back and talk some more guitars and influences. Well, I want to come back, just kind of, you can think about this now as we're coming back to it. You can tell people some of the heroes that you've had. You talk about these guys like the Jason Beckers and people like that, and we mentioned Paul Gilbert. You can tell people some of these people that you've had the honor of not just meeting, but sharing and being one-on-one with these guys. peers playing with them, working with them, not just, fanboy hype, all actually being appreciated by them. So tell us a little bit about that when we come back. So Humbucker Lover is saying Harley Davidson makes polish for satin finishes. I guess it takes those grease marks away. So that's kind of cool. Let me see here. Guitar for Cure says quarter pound and DiMartini custom S Seymour Duncan. Love the bridge Duncan pickup. Bobby Lopez says, what was the first video on MTV? Do you know that answer? Was it the video?
Video killed the radio star.
That was the first one then, right? Yep. And David Jorgen says, I think the EVH hard hand paint job is about a 10-day process according to the factory video. I think you're correct on that. Justin Girardi's here saying, hey, Eric, what's up, everyone? Late tuning in. No problem. You can always go back and replay it back. And Warren Hughes is saying, the Charvettes suck. They weren't a very good guitar. Yeah. Just like Chevettes weren't exactly the cool. Yeah. The Chevettes weren't very cool either, were they? Chevys were cool, but Chevettes, no, not so much. Guitar for Cure says, my pink Charvel is really identical to the yellow stripe in so many ways. I agree with that on that for sure. And that's a good guitar. Nice guitar he's got. Lau Ketchum's talking. He says he's itching to get some FU tone for a Schecter. I'm telling you, the proof is in the pudding. Start with that brass block and then go from there. But that's the first step for sure. Justin Gardy says, speaking of EVH paint jobs, I sent mine out in June to get Corvette gray metallic paint with black stripes. A guy called me today and said the paint process got messed up, needs to be redone. Yeah, it's one of those things, you want to, if you're going to get the stuff done, do it with someone who is good. I was never good at doing the guitars. I was always impatient, and I'd striped a lot of guitars in my day. I don't do it anymore because I'm still just as impatient, because I would paint them, and 15 minutes later I want to rip off the tape and play it. And I'm trying to take that stupidity back then and teach my boy. He wants to do this now. We do some things together. And it's like, trust me on this. We have to wait days on this. And it's hard to tell a kid to wait, but you got to wait, right? So I just don't do it anymore. Jay's Tacos and Guitar says, I'd love to get that Purple Burst San Dimas. That's a beautiful guitar. I'm torn between the purple and that cherry. Lau Ketchum says, Justin, why is it taking so? Okay, they're talking about the guitar. Let me see. Scroll down a little bit more. Mike Francis here says, EVH nerd, you're on the right live stream for sure. We're all EVH nerds here. That's when you're talking about nerding out for a little bit. That's one of the cool things. A lot of guests like it when they come on because, they're doing these radio interviews and things like that. They've got anywhere between 30 seconds to 5 minutes. And, they'll answer the questions that the people are asking them, but they don't get to just nerd out and just talk about their favorite pedal or, and that's what's fun about this kind of thing. It's low key, all kinds of fun stuff. Rollcamp 56 says, hi, Eric and Greg. What's Greg's live setup? Let's talk about that. That wasn't a question I had for you, but that's a great question. What is your typical live setup?
Yeah. Well, I always, if I'm flying somewhere, I'd like to get something Marshall. For my rig, I've got a Friedman Pink Taco, the 20 watt that I prefer. I've always used that live. I've got the BE 100, but it's, man, in a club or even a theater situation, a lot of guys like to control the stage volume, so it's just too much amp. It's, and I've never been in a band that's been, we could have the luxury of, having backline. Like we opened up for John 5, and honestly, he gave us like 8 or 9 feet or whatever it was of space. Enough for the drums. I'm right up against the cymbal of the drum set, and it's like I literally could not put my floor-mounted pedal unit there. I had a little EP booster and a delay in the loop, and that was it. And it was like, and they had a little, plastic thing around my stage speaker cabinet. So it's like, for me, it's like I try to keep it simple. A tube amp, some sort of tube amp will be great. I love Marshall. I just played an AVT 50 when I went back and played some shows on the East Coast. It was totally fine. It sounded like a Marshall. If you don't rely on the preamp and what the solid state is on that amp, it's totally fine. Just use the power amp and use pedals in front. But for me, like the ultimate thing is some sort of Friedman, either the BE 100 or like I said, I prefer the Pink Taco, and I'm cool with using a 112 cabinet. In fact, I've got an EVH 112 cab. And that if I have like a throw and go, I'm just taking the Pink Taco and the EVH cab.
That's perfect. Yeah, a nice small footprint, and you've got what you need.
Yeah, plenty loud. And sounds great.
These days, I mean, I think I'm a little bit older than you. I think at our age, we don't like to be rolling out 412s or dual 412s or extra ththings. Yeah. Whatever we can take out, that's a little less. And plus, clubs, especially some of the places that you probably play in, they're starting to get noise ordinances and things like that. Keep that volume down. So the less you walk in there looking like a rock star, probably the better it's going to go for the evening.
Yeah, that's the truth, man.
Yeah, for sure. Before we get back to the chat, let's talk about some of these people I mentioned, like the Paul Gilberts and people like that. You've got a really impressive resume, and to share, it's not to drop names, but at the same time, you've earned these dues. You've earned these dues. Tell us a little bit about who you've had the luxury of playing with and trading licks with, and maybe received a nice little friendly nod from the side of the stage.
Yeah. Oh, for sure, man. I mean, to me, I'm not a very religious person, but I maybe more spiritual, or, sort of like there's something turning this stone that we're on. And I got to tell you, I will go back to that story of getting my Racer X second heat. I asked a friend, do you think this would be cool? And he's like, it would be amazing. And then I heard second heat, and it blew my mind. Paul Gilbert on that, and Bruce Bouillet. Well, a couple years ago, I was in Bruce Bouillet's band. And that was, for a few years we did that, played a ton of shows, played a ton of rehearsals, learned all of Paul Gilbert's parts for that gig. And it was amazing. Bruce is like one of the best guitar players that ever walked the planet. And, those years were very important to me. And, even at the age that I got that gig, it was like early 40s. And I'm thinking, you know what? There's got to be something else out there guiding us. I could have I've gotten gigs with a ton of people. But the one guy that happened to, at this point and where we are, put a band together, have a record out, have shows, and he asked me to play in his band. It's like, you got to think there's something else moving it. So so I played with Bruce for a while. That was amazing. Played with Paul Gilbert. That was with my association through Ibanez. I actually played bass in that gig.
Nice.
I played another clinic, and I played with Billy Sheehan on bass, and I played guitar. I've played with a bunch of people in my band from hiring them. Ray Luzier played on my second record and a couple singles that I have. Ray Luzier's a drummer of Korn, and
played with
David Lee Roth.
Yep.
Yeah, it's with David Lee Roth. You just go down the list of all these guys that, early on, that I was fortunate when I moved to LA to have met Joey Basu, who had these people that he had worked with and recommended that, look, you're putting a record together. Why don't you call Glenn Sobel? Glenn Sobel's the drummer of Alice Cooper. He was on the first record, so that's who plays drums on that. I've worked with a bunch of really, really great guys that at the time maybe didn't have a big gig, but, I asked them and they did it, and they killed just like their big gig. Andrew Freeman is one of those guys. He's now in Last in Line, the original Dio Last in Line band from his first couple, albums, Vivian Campbell and Vinny Appice on drums. And it was Jimmy Bain, but Jimmy passed. And Andy sings in Last in Line, and Andy was on my second record. Philip Bino played on my second record. And I could, like I said, I could go down the list. Another one that I got to go back to Jimmy DeAnda on drums. Jimmy is just, I don't know if you know who that is, but he was in the original Bullet Boys.
Yeah, okay.
And he was like the real single stroke kind of John Bonham, just really, the groove was perfect on those first three Bullet Boys records. The coolest guy you'll ever meet, the most professional, and he can throw down. He was going to be in the Bruce Bouillet band for a minute there, but then, something, I don't know what happened, but we got Mike Hansen, who's now in Plenty Heavy. But Jimmy DeAnda is another one that's just, he's in Lynch Mob now.
Okay.
And if you see any of the new stuff, it's just, God, he's so good.
Yeah.
He's just the coolest dude, man. It just, that era of the late 80s, not to get off topic, but just to kind of wrap it up with this thought is, that era of the late 80s, when, I don't know if you guys had it in Canada, but we had the Headbangers Ball.
Yeah, familiar with it.
On Saturday night.
Yep.
And that was from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. I was religiously sitting in front of that TV on a Saturday night watching Headbangers Ball, and we had a VCR. I'd tape every episode.
Yeah.
And it was just like, that was church for me, And, but I remember, seeing a lot of these bands, and, you talk about not name dropping or whatever, and I've gotten to work with a lot of those guys, and I just think to myself, man, it really is just such a cool thing to be able to meet someone on like a business level, or like a musician to musician level, not a fan to musician, and then to be able to work with them. So again, it's not me trying to humble brag. It's I really, really do feel fortunate. And Jimmy DeAnda was like one of those guys that I just thought, man, look at that drummer back there. He's not playing like Queensryche style or anything. He's playing single stroke, very simple grooves, but it was like perfect for that band. And so anyway, that was another one that, I like to mention that because he might be a little bit under the radar for a lot of people, but man, he's amazing.
I've always said this, and I imagine you'll probably agree with this. I've always said for a successful musician, whether it's guitar or whatever it is, in this case we're talking guitar, always play with people at your level or much better than you, and it will make you, like, you can, if you're just to play with amateurs the rest of your life, it is going to kind of suck a lot of your will and your talent, your skills, your drive. It's nice to work with beginners and teach them as well too, but you need to be challenged on a regular basis. And the fact that you play with some of these guys, not just all guitar players, like these famous drummers, famous bass players like Billy Sheehan, for a perfect example. I mean, that's got to be inspiration until the cows come home there, to make you just drive a kick in the pants, And I know you're playing bass along Paul Gilbert, but hearing Paul riff on stage, you're holding down the foundation for him. That's building chops for you as well too. I imagine it's probably really shaped you just being in these different bands with these cats, I'm sure.
You know what it ends up being? It's funny that, like, because I don't mind telling you, I'm in my mid 40s, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of what came before it, and hopefully what's going to come in the future. Because I think to myself, I was aligned in an era where it was like, the 70s, when I was growing up in the 70s, it was Led Zeppelin, all that. It's awesome arena rock bands, and then in the 80s, it was all the stuff that it built who I am. Like, Van Halen in the 70s and 80s. It is who I am, and So, but I guess my point was getting to work with some of these guys, you get to a certain point where you just realize that there are weird takeaways. You mentioned takeaways in your show, but for me, it was like the one-on-one interaction, because I've got my guitar in my hand all day. So I kind of know that language to speak to someone in that language, but it's not so much that as it's the interaction of just the normal day-to-day stuff. And, like the Paul Gilbert thing it was basically three guys sitting in a room kind of working out the songs before we went on stage to do this clinic. And I thought to myself, Paul was what he was doing. It was interesting. I mentioned this on another show, but Paul said, hey, I want to show you this picking technique. And I'm going, dude, I don't know if he realizes that I learned how to play guitar by watching his instructional videos. I'm not going to say that.
The REH
and
videos.
Here I am playing bass because I was playing with fingers.
Yep.
So I picked up a pick, and he said, I want you to do upstrokes for, I thought it was 2 minutes or whatever, just upstrokes on all the strings. And so, to me, that was like just some of those things that interaction of things being not what you would expect, and just the normal day-to-day, the normal interaction, talking about stuff that wasn't music related was, I think, more important to me. And, I always think to myself that, the eye contact that these guys have made, as weird as that seems, that I would pick up on eye contact or different body language things that shows you that the person respects you to be in the room with you, or to let you into whatever their inner circle is, whatever. That, I think that meant more to me. And I got to tell you, I cannot name any of the guys that I've worked with that were not super cool. All the guys that I've worked with have all been super amazing as on a human level. So
nice.
Anyway.
That sometimes it speaks more volumes than talent. Anyone can learn licks and can, pull some smoke and mirrors sometimes, but you cannot, it's very hard to hide being a jerk or, a diva or, whatever, right? And a lot of these guys, like you're saying, good people first, talented people second.
Yeah,
I love
for
that.
Sure.
I love that for sure. The next thing I was going to ask you about is you talk about speaking different languages and speaking to people, period. So we were on a little talk show here right now. You run a podcast as well, and I haven't had the pleasure yet of hearing it yet. I do want to check it out, and I'm going to check it out. Tell us a little bit about what it is and some of the people you've interviewed, and just kind of what the whole background on it.
Yeah, well, I have a very good friend that runs this show called Amps and Axes, and they had me on their podcast show a couple of years, 3 years ago. I didn't even know what a podcast was. I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah.
But since I'm so inundated with music, I would always listen to, like, when I wasn't recording or playing live or doing a clinic or whatever it was, I'd always listen to like talk radio or something that was unrelated to what I did all day long. So anyway, when they had me on, I realized that it's a really cool medium. I could probably ask these people that I knew, and I had mentioned some of them already, questions that I never heard them answer. It always seems like when you have a publicist that grants an interviewer an interview, there's always a canned list of things that they give to the person that's interviewing, and they stick to the script. And I've always noticed that, like, even when Steve Vai will come out with a new, whatever he's coming out with new, he's answering the same questions.
I know.
And it always bugs me that people don't ask certain things on a musician's level. So that's kind of what my approach was. I've gotten to talk with some really amazing builders, guitar builders, John Sullivan, Scott Dallahover. This is a really cool one. He's got Ghost Machine guitars, and it's definitely a Van Halen vibe. If you've not checked them out, check out Ghost Machine guitars. He was a guitar player in Dangerous Toys.
Okay.
And is likely one of my one of my best friends now. But anyway, he's got Ghost Machine guitars. Doug Pinnick, I mentioned.
Yep.
Gosh, I'd have to look at the list, but a lot of really great players, builders. I've had Brian Wampler on, who I work with those guys as I'm always the demo guy at their booth the last 3 years, whatever. But yeah, it's just been, and sometimes you get like Warren Hughes. I got to tell you, I wanted to change the format a little bit, sort of like, 3/4 of the way through the year, where I really wanted to ask even tougher questions, things that would possibly make people feel uncomfortable, but they wanted to talk about.
Yeah, get them out of their skin a little bit.
Exactly. And it's not like you have to go to this negative place, but people have frustrations. And Warren Hughes was one of those guests that when I did the AMP show this past summer, I spoke in a panel with, where do you hear this list? Lonnie Spector, who runs the AMP show, asked me to be on this panel. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to go out and just be a spectator.
Sure.
What am I going to offer with Carl Verheyen, Larry Mitchell, Alan Hines, Warren Hughes was the other guy, and me.
Yeah.
So Warren and I was just like, as soon as I realized he was on Facebook and social media, I immediately said, I'm going to befriend this guy.
Sure.
And we did. We made quick friends, and we played at the jam night at the AMP show. Anyway, my point is, Warren, I asked him, if you listen to this episode, if you happen to listen to it on my podcast, I wanted to ask him about how it felt being the same age as I am. We both listened to Headbangers Ball, the same exact identical music, but what was it like? And we grew up in the same area. I grew up in Pittsburgh. He grew up in West Virginia. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
And and he loves the same thing. So I was asking him, what was it like for you growing up in the area? Because I know what it was like for me and all my buddies. And he just gave me the best, most candid answers. And if you listen to the podcast, you'll hear we really go deep. And I had maybe known him 24 hours or something.
Wow.
So stuff like that was really, for me, that's been the real gem of being able to do a podcast, is when someone feels comfortable enough to answer a question that is not a comfortable question.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that pushes the limits of what they would feel their fans would want to hear from them in social media. So I've been very fortunate. No one's gotten upset with me. I don't push it too far.
Yeah.
But I do like to ask those tough questions, and it's been really, really cool. I love it.
I like that.
I don't get to do it all that often, but I've got about 40 episodes.
That's gonna be the one I'm gonna go to first. That's gonna be my discovery of the show for sure, because he's in the chat here right now too, and we're working on a time to get him on the show. I think we're gonna have some fun with him as well too. So it'll let me get a little bit into his world beforehand as well, because like you said, you've had 24 hours with him at that point. I don't even have that much, so I need to get in his skin and learn his world. We're friends on Facebook, which is great, but I need to kind of walk a mile in his shoes a little bit just so I can see where he's from, and I'm looking forward to that as well. But I'm really looking forward to discovering that. But tell people where they can actually. I have links to all your entities down below, but tell where they can hear this podcast.
So it's kind of I don't know, it's on iTunes. I mean, if you look up Iconoclast and look up my name, you'll find it, Greg Marra, Iconoclast Music Podcast. It's interesting because the mobile app, they changed the format, so it's a little wonky. I don't know.
Okay.
I think you could still go in there and search it, but other than that, if you go into any medium for which you find a podcast and you look up Iconoclast, that's one word, and Greg Marra, you'll find it.
Okay, perfect. I really encourage people to check that out. I think we'll have some fun with that for sure. And some of the names you're mentioning on there too, like Brian Wampler, a great dude. And a real gear nerd. I mean, to take him out of his own company, he loves everything. Yeah. He's one of those guys too. Yeah. He's not opposed to saying, "Oh, this MXR pedal sounds great. This Boss pedal is great." Some guys can just be so focused on their own brand, whereas Brian embraces it all. And Robert Keeley's like that a lot too. You know, another one of those guys where, you know, you can talk. I remember talking to a good friend of mine is very, very good friends with Robert Keeley, and vice versa. You know, I was giving away a Wampler pedal. They sent me a pedal to give away. It was the Pinnacle Deluxe V2. I love that pedal. I did not want to give that pedal away. I loved it to death. It was one of the hardest pedal I've had to put in a box and give away to a fan, you know, to a contest, whatever. I loved it. But, you know, I was talking, you know, to both those guys, both Brian and Robert, like, okay, do you have any hard feelings if we're talking about this when you're on the show or vice versa? And no, go ahead, talk about it, you know, which is very, very cool. Because you don't want to say something that might affect the other guy. And, well, you know, I'm showing you some love, and how come you're not talking about my product? You want to make sure everyone's happy, right? Both those guys are the classiest dudes on the planet. And speaking of some of these companies, after we go back to the chat, I know I've missed a lot of people. I want to say hi to a bunch more questions here, and at least to say hi to a bunch of them. We're going to come back and talk about all the people that have supported you and still supporting you via product endorsements, and you know, maybe some of them you're doing clinics for, and just you know, who are there for you through thick and thin. So we'll come back to that. That's the next on deck. So Carlo Santin was saying there's lots of YouTube videos of Eddie's isolated guitar tracks, Unchained Panama, I'm the One. Yeah, a lot of us download those things, and it's great to download those and practice with them, because a lot of times you'll hear parts that you don't hear when they're lost in the vocals and the bass and the drums, and you can learn things that you're like, oh, I was doing that wrong. And Headbangers Ball, like you mentioned, see, in Canada at the time, we didn't have cable TV in that. Like, Canada didn't really have it. But I lived in a place where it was, you know, an hour away from Detroit, Michigan. So the you know, over the air TV, you know, we lived close enough that we could pick up Detroit, Michigan. We were able to get that. So I got to experience that as well too. Let me see here. Tavares Project says Push Comes to Shove, killer song and solo. Roll Camp 56 music on City TV was first, I think. Yeah, new music. Yeah, that's right. City TV. Greg Walker, Kelly Schultzer says, love Friday Night Videos. Triumph was my favorite band back then. Great band for sure. Greg Walker, after the launch of MTV, everyone had to make a video. Some good, some really bad, but they sold records. Yeah, videos are what pushed the records, and that's how people discovered bands. And especially during the 80s when there's two different versions of 80s. There was 80s like we like, you know, metal and all that kind of stuff. And then there was like the pop, you know, is all the, you know, which crossed over into the metal and things like that too. But that's what all the girls were buying records because of these guys, and all the maybe guys buying them because of the girls and stuff like that too. They were really selling vinyl for sure. Warren Hughes says Friday Night Videos. Let me see where else. Guitar for Cure says I reverse every toggle on every guitar I own due to my Wolves. Yeah, I guess once you're used to playing the Wolfgang, you have to, you know. Yeah. Don Shepard says looks like an ESP or Strat neck. Probably talking about the other there. Rich Data says awesome seeing Greg on here. Was just listening to Collective Disorder earlier today. Very, very nice.
Thank you.
Isaac Berman's here. Speaking of nice guitars, I haven't ever played one of his guitars. I have him as a friend on, I hope I pronounced his last name right. I love the work of his guitars. And I remember he shared something one day. Are you friends with him?
Who is it?
Isaac. No, am I pronouncing his name right? Bureman? He builds his own guitars, beautiful, beautiful guitars. Okay. And I hope I'm saying this right. I'm the worst joke teller, and retelling a joke, I always forget the punchline, and people are like, you just wasted 5 minutes of my time. But he was saying this one joke, one of his kids was saying one day, he was working on a Stratocaster or something like that, and his child come up and said, Daddy, that's one of the nicest guitars that you've ever built. And it wasn't his. He goes,
wow.
You know, he makes beautiful, beautiful guitars. And it was just a joke he was sharing that, you know, it wasn't he was just doing some work on it. And his child says, that's one of the nicest guitars you've ever done. And so his ego took a little bit of a bruising there, which was kind of funny. I love that one. Okay, and he says he's actually saying great job on the EVH Gear TV videos. Thank you, I appreciate that. Let me see here. Rocamp says I'd love to see a picture of the 3 pickups, and I could be wrong on that. Don't quote me on that. I think,
me too.
You know, I think the man walked on the moon. Did it really happen? I'm not quite sure. We're told it did. Carlos Anderson says the neck pickup worked, but Eddie didn't know how to wire the 2 pickups. He also partially melted the bridge pickup when he left it in the pot of wax too long. Did the same thing too. As soon as I found out Eddie would boil his guitar strings and melt his, pot his pickups, I did the same thing too. They were just cheap pickups, so I didn't care. But yeah, it doesn't take too long, a couple seconds, and that's all you got. Okay, there you go. So Greg Walker says you are correct. Johnny Dave and Chris Hubbard back you up. Let me see here. Rocamp says sounds amazing. That's probably watching the video. Don Shepard says cheers there. Kelly Schatzer enjoying it so far. Thanks. I'm just gonna see if I'm missing anything else here. Dan Wilhite's here saying this sounds amazing, fantastic. Really glad you like it. Peter says, Pink Taco had an EP booster. Am I going to guess? Yeah. So there you go. That EP booster is my favorite always on pedal. And I was I was so happy when, like, I play a Helix here as well too. I love the tube amps, as you can see behind me. But the latest firmware update of the Helix, they brought out some new pedals, and one of them was the EP booster, and it sounds just like it. And I can put it in my chain, and it sounds just like my rig. So I'm really happy with that. Warren Hughes sounds awesome. I love that tone. Mike Francis, I'll share this to the Friendly Gear Freaks, Eric. Thank you. Are you familiar with that page, friendlygearfreaks.com?
No, I'll have to check it out.
Check it out. You'll probably thank me later. They don't call it Friendly Gear Freaks for nothing. They're good people. You know, you go in some of these forums. Who was I? I was talking to Derek Fuller from. I wasn't talking to him. I was just commenting on his post on Facebook. I love Van Halen fans, but sometimes they can be really, really mean too. There's some really cool people out there, and they can be really mean, whether they think their opinion's right or maybe I don't know what it is. But sometimes you go into these forums, and I say forums, Facebook groups, pages, whatever, website forums, and you're afraid to ask a question because as soon as you say like, I'd like to get the Eddie Van Halen Brown sound. What do I do? And of course, that's a vague question. It's a loaded question. But to some people, that's all they know is they've heard this Van Halen, they hear Brown sound, they put the two together, and do I need a PV? Do I need this? Do I need that? And they just get flamed to death, and they either go jump off a bridge or they never go on the internet again. And either one is a bad thing. These guys they're just one of many out there, the Friendly Gear Freaks, where they treat you nice. You can go in there and ask a question and be treated with diplomacy and treated like you're one of them, right? So it's nice. You check it out. I think you'll have fun with that.
Okay.
It's all kinds of gear. It's not to one particular thing at all. Let me see here. Let's continue down. Showman Blue says, man, the drums are great on this too. The drums are great on that. That were really, really good. So people are really commenting on that. Darren Moore, I was just talking about him earlier, says, hey, super late, but had to say hi. Sounds awesome, guys. Great to see you, Darren. Daniel Babin, great riff, Greg. Lots. Yeah, that was tight. So yeah, these are comments coming in just after I played the video. Thank you. Obviously we're way behind, but that's cool. Sean Zimmerman's here saying, hey, all. Hope you're well, Sean. Let me see here. Bobby Clipper, that was great, Greg. Lots of good positive feedback on that. Jay's Tacos and Guitars. Nice riff. And Ibanez, a Jay Custom. Is that what he's saying?
No, it's a Prestige.
Okay. Prestige. Showman Blue says, looked like it might have been a Koa top, but I'm not positive. Is it Koa in that?
Yeah, they call that the Koa top. Yep.
Nice. Mm-hmm. Good eye for sure. I'll have to find that in my old guitar player issues, or I think that's what she's saying. Len Bias III is jumping in saying, hey guys, see if I missed anyone else. Rick VH is here. Scott J's jumping in saying, hope all is well. Let me see, who else am I missing here? 412s, that's what roadies are for. Yeah, very true. Not all of us are have the luxury of having roadies. Let me see here. David says he just put a new Morpheus dive bomb pedal that works well with hardtails and 7 strings into an EVH 5150 212 50 watt. Sounds great on crunch, high mids, and into a Marshall 412 bottom. Very nice. And here's a good comment from Warren. He says, now that I feel that is how I feel when I go out to California, everybody is good. And that's why I think where a lot of people go to California, obviously they went there originally to try to get discovered, but it's a hodgepodge of talent, and it can only make you better, for sure. You might be the cool cat in your little small town, and when I say you, I'm not saying you in general, people in general.
Yeah.
You might be the king of the hill in your small town. You get to LA, and all of a sudden now it's like, whoa. And I know some guys personally that have never left their small hometowns because they know that they're the big fish here, but when they get out there, they're just like they're the food, for the the other ones that are out there. They'll snack on you. Let me see here. Humbucker says, I never ask questions other than on my own forum I had because people are so rude and just bash on people. I agree. It's, I'm an adult, but sometimes I am afraid to ask a question because, I know things about Van Halen a little bit. I know things about web design. I know things about that. There's a lot of things I don't know about. I didn't know anything about the Helix. Nothing. Not a single thing. Mm. And I was, I asked a question, and now I'm well. I shouldn't say I'm well versed. I'm learning because these people come right out off the get-go and said, here's the knowledge. And what else can I help you with? Sam VH5150 is jumping in saying hello all. And let's talk about these companies that have, and we are pretty much at the 90-minute mark, but we'll keep going for a bit because there's good stuff to talk about.
Okay.
Tell us about the companies that you're working with right now that just have been there for you and that you're on the roster and that you promote.
Yeah, for sure. Well, as far as guitars go, I have to give a huge, massive shout out to my friend Paul Holgate, who works at Ibanez and got me on the roster in 2015. As of 2017, more non-exclusive. So I'm just meaning they're keeping me on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
I want to play other things. I got to keep working. I got to keep the wheels spinning. So if there's, and I'm not saying there's a downtrend, but if that is one of the scenarios that's happening with certain big companies like that, I just got to keep working. So if there's no work in a particular sort of area, I've got to keep working. So I love Ibanez. I've got a ton of them here. Great company. I'm also going to start working with Iconic Guitars.
Yes.
I've got a new friend, Kevin Proctor, and I love the way they look. I haven't played them yet. I have some friends that are great players that have them. So I'm looking forward to playing those guitars. I am an absolute fanboy of Charvel, and I have a ton of them and have had a ton of them. That's my thing. And it goes back to the Eddie Van Halen thing. That's the first guitar that he did, with Wayne Charvel. So that's not going to ever go away. I love those guitars. As far as companies that support me, I am a Fishman pickups artist, and have done some clinics for them. Jamie Scott from Third Power Amplification sent me a set of his mag frags, which I love. They're pickups that I put in the pirate guitar, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Wampler pedals. I've been their demo guy for the last 3 years. I'm one of their artists as well, and I can't say enough great things about Wampler. Probably a ton I'm missing. I'm working with this new company called ChromaCast that makes gig bags. We've got a signature Rudy Sarzo bag. Great tuners, great cables. Tsunami Cable sent me a cable. I'm going to play one of their sponsored shows at NAMM. Man, I'm probably missing some people, but Kurt Mangan strings. I love his strings, and one of their artists. Real quick thing I want to say about endorsements. I know we are running out of time, but I will say
please
this.
Take your time.
I play what I like and what I really, really feel strongly in. I don't necessarily want people to give me anything because I don't want there to be anything attached with it.
Yeah.
I don't need any gear. I definitely don't need guitars.
Yep.
It's nice to have support when you're on the road or whatever, but 9 times out of 10, that's not going to ever play out. That scenario, unless you're in Alice in Chains or Avenged Sevenfold, is not going to play out where you're either 1, getting a paycheck, 2, getting a signature. There are so many guitar players out there right now that's not even in my, I'm not even thinking about that in my purview, whatever you call it. So for me, I just buy what I want. So as far as the endorsement things go, the companies that I'm mentioning, I really believe in those companies because I'm going to say this as sort of cleanly as I can without any sort of emphasis on anything. I really like Brian Wampler. I like the companies that I'm working with. I happen to really like Kevin Proctor, talking to him from Iconic Guitars. I know David Friedman. He's a genius. So Friedman is another company that I'm one of their artists, But here's the thing. I bought those amps, and they put me on the artist roster. It's not like I ever asked for anything for free. Same thing with Ibanez. I was doing clinics and stuff. I was working, so it made sense for me to have whatever their current guitar is.
Sure.
So I guess what I'm saying, as much as like I said, I don't want to make it sort of like an emotional thing, but
No.
I just love what I play. And there's someone to talk to when I make the call. If I want to call or message Jamie Scott from Third Power about something and he gets back to me, that just says the world for whatever company that I'm working with. So I tend to stay away from the corporate kind of notion. I know that there is a guy named Kurt Mangan, a guy named Jamie Scott. Brian Wampler is a real guy, and I get to hang out with him at NAMM. So, like I said, emphasis on the people and the company and their, and their products as well. But you got to have that one person that you're talking to, because otherwise there are a million guys out there that are looking for free stuff, and I have no interest in that. I'd rather just buy it because I love it.
Perfect way to say that, and without mentioning one of the big corporate conglomerates like we're talking about here, there's the big ones that we read about in the news right now all the time, where the artist relations guys and girls are leaving on a regular basis. So you're an artist on tour. Your guitar is, you need another guitar, something broke, you need some support. Maybe guitars didn't make it on a flight. You need some guitars there. And okay, you call your AR person and that person doesn't work anymore. It's almost like a Walmart greeter. It's a different greeter every time you walk into Walmart. You can't have that. That's where business
that happens too.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that's where businesses succeed is that customer experience. Like you might have 500 customers for your little small business, or you might have 500,000. But when you treat every person like they're the only customer, that's when you really have that relationship selling, relationship building, relationships in general are the key to success. And some of these people just aren't doing it.
Yeah. I want to have someone that I can talk to. And you're right. It's going to happen where, I mean, here's the other thing too. And like I said, I won't be too long-winded, but this is definitely, I feel like, an important topic. Being integrated into, the demo world of like people send me stuff and I make a demo video, or I'll play at NAMM or conventions or play clinics or the ton of really cool things I've gotten to do. But I think one of the things to remember, if you get an endorsement, respect it, because that guy that's working at that company that you might think is a little string company or a guitar pick company, he's going to go work for somebody else, because there's only a handful of guys that work in the music industry. Yep. Honest to God, they're gonna go on to work for somebody else. Mike Taft worked at Ibanez. Mike Taft now works at Gretsch. You can, like I'm telling you, you can name any guy, and I'll tell you where he worked, or where the 10 companies worked before, because it just keeps. Chris Cannella was just on your show.
Yeah.
He worked for EVH, Jackson.
ESP.
I mean, you could probably name a ton of other ones too. ESP. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's
so.
I've talked to people.
So respect it.
Yeah, I've talked to people where you're talking a completely different. I mean, they might even be competitors. They might be complete different fields, and they're like, I see that you had so and so on your show, whatever, and they're like, I'm best friends with that person. And like they are literally, they're at trade shows together. They've either worked together for the same companies. It is a very, very small world. So do not burn bridges. Number one, don't ever burn a bridge. I've told people so many times, don't look for a handout. Never ask for a handout. And you need to be, if you're an artist out there trying to, if you're seeking endorsements, always be an ambassador for the company. It's not what the company can do for you. It's what you need to do to, number one, return the favor. And you don't necessarily have to be a superstar to get an endorsement. It's what you can do. Maybe you have a social media influence, because these days a lot of influencers are sometimes the lesser known people, as long as they have a reach. As long as you can back up what you're saying and play a little bit, but you have a reach, you have some knowledge of the product. If you're just a fanboy and you know all the stuff, that's good too. But you have to be able to give something back. Always approach people saying, look, I'd like to be your janitor. I used that term earlier. And your custodian. I want to be, maybe I'll use the proper terms. I don't want to insult janitors. That's a great profession as well too. It pays bills. But get on the ground floor, be the mailroom guy, whatever it takes to be that person. And I'm using figuratively speaking, but just get at the ground floor. And even if you don't get past the ground floor, you're at that ground floor with a company that, well, if they grow, you might grow with them as well too. Get in there and be very respectful, like you said, and it will go a long way in life. Don't be that one that wants to have, a list like this, because all that is bragging. And you see it at NAMM. You see these guys going around with bags at each place. Can I have this? Can I have this? Can I have this? And then they end up getting 50 endorsements. And yet, does that person have a record out? Or have they done anything? Right.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's all respect, and that's life 101 for sure. Last question I wanted to ask you about as well too. Sure. So someone in the chat had a question. Rocamp56 is asking about the guitar string. So you answered that. What do you do outside of music? I mean, it doesn't seem like you have a lot of spare time, but what do you do for that downtime?
Well, look, my studio is at my house, and I live in Southern California. So I'm very proud of the fact that I can work here. I do a lot of video editing. So if someone is in Southern California, they want to have you name it, whatever video work they want done. And it's not always that I'm running the cameras and doing the editing. Sometimes I'll just do editing or what have you. But so I do some of that. But I have to say I'm very proud of the fact that every morning my son wakes up, I'm here, and every day at around 3:00 I go pick him up from school. It's very close to where we live. So I mean, outside of my life, which is music, it's all about my son and my wife. So I'm proud of that too.
I love that. I can share that with you as well too, and I feel that's a cool connection I have, because same thing here as well too. What you see here, the studio for the show, is also my work studio. I work from home every day. I quit my full-time radio gig in November of 2016. It's been just over a year to the day, And I love being home with the family. When I go away, if back in the day when I would go away from home, if it was for conventions or meetings or that kind of thing, some of my clients, I would go away overnight for trade shows and things like that. I didn't like being away from home. I was like, I want to get right back home. Now with my better half's health, I have to be here all the time. And I didn't quit my job before she got sick. She got sick after the fact. And it's almost like, you talk about these callings that you have in life. I just had it with my boss at the radio station. I quit. And shortly after, she got sick. And it was a blessing for me to be home. Be here and with the boy, as you've seen through my Facebook and things like that as well too.
Yeah.
I mean, we're like Velcro. I love it. So I have huge respect to you, for
Thanks, man.
being the dad and the husband. And you just celebrated an anniversary the other day. Congratulations. 14 years. Is that right?
Yeah.
Am I right?
14 years. I've known my wife 22 years, since the 90s, but we moved from Pennsylvania to LA together and got married it was 14 years ago. So yeah.
She's going to tease you about that one after. It's about right, Greg. Yeah. How long was that, Greg? No, I love it. That's great. So congratulations on that. And I'm surprised. Thanks, I remembered my short-term memory. 14 sounded right to me, and I did not write that down. I can show you my iPad. So that was the little bit of gray matter I have left here. So listen, guys, thank you so much for joining in the chat. And speaking of quitting my job, I do have a Patreon now. Not that I'm trying to throw a plug out there, but patreon.com/EVHGearTV. You will see that later on. And down in the description of the video here, there's links to Greg's website, which has links to the band. There's the store on there, the e-store as well too. And then I've also got Plenty Heavy's Facebook links, so please go give some likes over there. There's Twitter links and things like that as well too. Everything you can ask for. I think you have your Instagram on the website too, I think.
Yep.
So find all those links there as well too. Everyone, I want you to have a fantastic weekend. Greg, I'm going to say goodbye to you off the air in a second, but I hope we were able to warm up your weekend. We definitely need it here in Canada. Thanks. That's a little cool. It's been a while. We've been talking about this one for a while, and I'm really glad we did this, and I had a lot of fun with you this evening.
Me too, Eric. Thanks, Eric. It was awesome.
Awesome. Great time. Everyone have a fantastic weekend. I know Humbucker Lover, if he's still here in the chat, he has a show tomorrow. I apologize. I think it's 10 o'clock in the morning Eastern Standard Time, but take a look at Humbucker Lover. Just click on his name in the chat, find his channel. He has Sean Silas's band Riot, who I had on the show last week. Great guys. The three-piece band out of North Hollywood there. It'd be a good interview to go check out, so I do encourage you to go check that out as well. Follow Greg's platforms, and I'm telling you, you won't be disappointed. If you're looking for a new source of guitar inspiration, he certainly is one to fill that void for sure. Everyone, have a fantastic weekend. I'm going to turn it over to the little man at the outro credits here. He's going to tell us what his name is, what he's playing. You'll hear some more information on the Patreon, and I will see you guys all very, very soon. Stay tuned. Greg will be right there. Cheers, everyone.